Be advised that the views and opinions of the hosts and guests do not reflect those of the station.
Good morning. Welcome to Expat Insights. I'm your host Raju Mandhian. Here at Expat Insights, we take external views of internal successes by foreigners, expats and immigrants who have made Philippines their home and are doing good in the Philippines, either in business or society. This morning we have two Asians. One is a homegrown Asian, very Filipino, Mr. Noel Mendoza, and then right after him is a Malaysian gentleman who claims to be Filipino because he's been here so long. And both of them are here to they're both IT experts kind of a thing, and they are here to talk about excellence in two different fields of businesses today. My first guest, Noel Mendoza, is the Director for Application Services of Hewlett-Packard, and he is here to talk to us about Application Services Management Excellence. And that's a mouthful, so I'm going to ask him to explain that. And he also has a 1-minute video which he wants to present way before we start talking about the subject matter. So Noel Mendoza, welcome to Expat Insights.
Thank you very much for having me, Raju.
So Noel, I heard you a couple of months ago talk about the advent of IT in today's world, no? And from that perspective, going back to that presentation which we'll talk about, tell me, what is Application Services Management Excellence first?
Okay, well, application services really is the management of the application systems for customers. So most businesses will run their back office, your customer care, your banking system, your retail system on a IT platform, right?
Okay.
To provide finance, human resource management, their supply chain management, and other business processes for them, right?
Yeah.
And our team basically manages all of this for the customer when they don't want to do it themselves. So they outsource the management of that infrastructure, the applications, to companies like ourselves.
So regardless of who created their architecture,
Yes.
regardless of who built their systems or how old or new their systems are, they call you in?
Exactly.
That must be a tough challenge, to go in and diagnose what exists.
Well, in the, I guess the art of us being in business is fixing people's problems, right?
Yeah, that must be huge. I'm thinking somebody built their system in the 80s or 90s, and these were probably Jurassic architecture, and you go in and say, okay, let me first figure this out.
Yes, we take over those systems, we manage
Yeah.
it for them, and one of the things that we do for them is also modernize these systems. A lot of them, like you said, were built in the Jurassic period, right? With COBOL, Fortran, assembler,
Yeah.
and we bring it back into the present.
Yeah.
We use new languages like Java, .NET,
Yeah.
and we modernize that, put great interfaces into it, move it to the mobile platforms, and move it into present-day architectures, right?
Yeah.
Larger systems, more powerful machines. And those are the services that we do for people.
Good. So, okay, so that is Application Services Management. And
Exactly.
you guys are the best in the field in town.
We're absolutely the best in the field in the
I'm
town.
just kidding you. Now,
Not just the town.
In the whole world? Well, let's be, yeah.
Yes.
Well, go for it. One day you shall be. The second thing on my mind is, Noel, which you talked about a few months ago, and which is actually the heart of this subject matter today, is that how much has the world changed in the last 20, 30 years? So can you give me a run through on what was and what is for people who are not in the know? Like, I'm a baby boomer, late one, and I have no idea how fast the world has changed. No? So could you create a perspective on that for me?
Okay, well, with the talk that you saw me, and I talked a little bit about my history through the IT, industry.
It was very interesting, ladies and gentlemen. This guy talked about the time that he had no idea what a punch card was. Neither do I today, no? So, or what an Excel file was. And from there up today, he's one of the biggest honchos in town for IT. So that is the presentation he made 2 months ago. Yeah.
So I started my career really in IT. My first job was actually in a punch card factory.
Okay.
Right? The punch card was basically the floppy disk or the storage device of that time, where they stored information. And from
In
there,
dots and dots and dots and dots.
in holes and dots and stuff like that, and
Yeah.
read by punch card machines, converted
Right.
into electronic formats,
Yeah.
and then used by the computer systems to process that data.
Yeah.
Essentially, that stayed the same until today. It still works the same, except the medium where we store that information.
The core science is still the same.
Exactly.
Which is
the
zeros
binaries.
and binary,
Yeah,
zeros
it's
and
binary,
ones, yeah.
right? Right, zeros and ones.
Yeah.
But how we've used that now
Yeah.
in our society has
Yeah.
changed immensely.
How has it changed? I mean, what has been the evolution of it?
It used to be IT systems were to run, the first applications were really military in nature, right?
Okay.
For, to conduct,
Yeah.
deployment of troops and targeting systems and the like.
Yeah.
Nowadays, it is embedded in the fabric of everything we do. And I guess the biggest proof point to that is you look at the, I guess your children, people on the street, how they communicate with each other, how
Yeah.
people bank today,
Yeah.
how people, reach out to their loved ones in Saudi Arabia and other parts of the world.
Yeah.
That's all IT enabled.
I must bring this to the highlight. Many of us are users. I mean, everyone is a user. And a lot of us have not been aware of how the progress has happened. We've adapted to it. Like, we moved from the big black dial phone to a smartphone
Mobile,
now.
digital,
And
yeah.
we moved, intuitively moved. But what happened in the background is what you know.
Yes.
Am I right?
Exactly. Well, the interesting thing is usually there is a technology area, right, that redefines the industry landscape.
Yeah.
And for our day, it is information technology. Previous days, it was like the spinning jenny, automating, allowing people to go from agriculture to industrial.
Right. That was like, those were slow, big transitions,
Yes.
Yeah.
And because of the way we're now able to process information, the speed of change has increased incrementally.
I know it's terrifying. I must confess, it's terrifying. I mean, what? People are doing this now, yeah?
Yeah, we talk about in the industry, we talk about internet years, right, which are like faster than dog years.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the progress of change and how that's impacting us, it's almost like you said, right? It's unfathomable how far the technology will go.
Yeah.
Whether this is used for medicine, whether that's used for being able to deploy new capabilities and offerings, whether that, in the future I saw a film, they talked about how do we manage the aging population in the future,
Yeah.
right? And for a lot of that people, in large countries, that means they're stuck in a home when there's no family around.
Yeah.
But nowadays, we can manage them, monitor them with sensors that look at their blood pressure. They look at their movement across the room.
Yeah.
They create algorithms to basically monitor the patterns of behavior of that person.
Yeah.
And which basically translates to 24-hour care of that person.
Yeah.
We know exactly what he's doing, how he's feeling, what the blood pressure is,
Yeah.
where he's moving, if he falls down. So again, the world will, absolutely change in the future. And one of the things that I'm most excited about in the industry is we're in the cusp of that development, right? And we're in the population that is starting to reimagine what the future will look like.
What is that word you used?
It's reimagining.
No, cost.
At the cusp.
Oh, cusp,
At the
okay.
cusp of all of these changes,
Yeah, right, yeah.
So we're pretty much, I think, into the early cycle of how technology is changing the world.
Yeah.
But in the future, everything will be enabled by how we process things.
Noel, I know. I mean, even I can't imagine the questions I should be asking about the future because they're still assumptive of what is going to happen. But there's a little clip that you brought.
Yes.
Is that okay that if I plug it in so that my people watching get on the same page as you and I?
Okay.
Because we've seen the clip, so we have a little awareness of what we're talking about. So let's put in that little clip which Noel brought, and then we'll talk about what the future looks like, coming from how it has moved in the last 40 years, 30, 40 years.
Yes, please.
40 years.
Let's
So let's
go.
do that clip.
Hi, I'm Meg Whitman, President and CEO of Hewlett-Packard. We are living in a period of enormous change. Very powerful mega trends are forcing us to change the way technology is consumed, delivered, and paid for. These types of big shifts happen once every 10 to 15 years. Shifts like from the mainframe to the client-server environment, from client-server to Web 1.0, from Web 1.0 to mobile and web services. What's emerging out there is a new style of IT driven by social, mobile, cloud, and big data. Think internet scale with billions of users and devices all around the world accessing, uploading, downloading, and using applications that require servers to help them do things. It's not just about cell phones and tablets connected to the internet, but millions of sensors collecting data. It's machines talking to other machines, generating not petabytes of data.
So that means that for every person, there will be 6.6 objects connected to the internet. We're talking about a world blanketed with billions of sensors. These sensors are taking information from real physical life, from environmental sensors.
All right, there you go.
outside, maybe
There we
even
go.
worn
There we go.
within
There we
your
go.
code.
So Noel, that's amazing. That's mind-boggling. Yeah.
Yes, that's absolutely just a view of the future. We may not go down that path.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? And one of the interesting things is we're trying to define that for ourselves, and many people. As technology has permeated, the everyday society of people, or the reality of people, a lot of people now are looking at how we apply this technology. Doctors are looking at it, musicians are looking at it, movie makers, healthcare workers, and the types of solutions that will be developed for the future are there going to be built upon these technologies that give us a lot more information, a lot more ability to process things to make our lives easier.
Well, how exactly is any application conceptualized and created? What are the steps? I mean, you go into any business. Let's go into media, for example. No? How exactly does the architect, one who puts together the application or the routing of how the process will flow, how much time does it take for him to understand and create the system or the system flow?
Well, it really, the first thing that we look at really is what are the requirements? What is the problem that the person or the application needs to solve?
Yeah.
And then what are the facets of that problem, right? For example, it can be, creating a movie or a clip, like the videos that we just saw a while ago, right?
Right.
How then you create that, digitize it, edit it, transform it from one format to the other, pass it around for other people to take a look at and, as workflow.
Yeah.
So it looks at the whole process of that problem space and looks at ways that the current technology can be applied to it to solve those problems.
Yeah.
Right.
So it probably requires a lot more researching on any system first. So my question comes in that you can't really research every aspect of the system. Cannot. Because things will change or things related to it or maybe other disciplines or other systems related to it will not be in your control or in your ability to change. No? So are you saying that every system or every application that you create is always in a state of flux?
Absolutely. So, application development is really a very collaborative process between, the developers and the users of that system.
Yeah.
And the more views of how it will be used down the road
that
are brought forward, then the better the application is able to do that.
Can you cite an example that a layman would have experienced that it went through the process of development and changed through? Well, banking or traffic or medicine?
Let's probably take something that's a lot more applicable to a lot of users, right? Facebook.
Okay,
Most people use Facebook. Initially, it came out as a college campus application.
Yeah.
So that allows people within the campus to communicate with each other, or organize parties, organize different events with each other.
Yeah.
And who knew down the road that Facebook would become a major application for sensing behavior, for looking at patterns, for selling advertising space on.
Yeah.
Right. So the initial thought of the application was redefined as they looked at how better
What
to
has
exploit.
been the latest change in Facebook, which is dramatically different from its original concept today? I mean, whatever you are aware of.
Well, the commercialization of the the information that's collected by Facebook.
Right. Is that what you call big data?
That would be the big data, right?
That would be big data.
And that was the whole draw for companies, the social media companies, right? They could collect information about a population or
Right,
ecosystem.
right.
And now they've monetized that by selling that information, by packaging
So
it and slicing
Facebook
it.
has today 2 billion users or less.
About 2 billion plus. Yeah.
Grow, hitting 2 billion today.
Yeah.
No? So
I think that's the target in the future, right?
yeah, probably that's
Yeah.
their ultimate peak. No? So 2 billion people, what are they thinking? What are they wanting? How are they communicating? What is their trending topics, or what are their preferences in food, clothing, or banking, or anything? That data is gathered by Facebook today and sold,
Yes.
made available to people who want to recreate or rechange these systems in several disciplines. Is that correct?
It's absolutely right. In fact, it's
Man.
the marketer's dream, right? You're having insight into the customer. All that data is sliced and diced into market segments, age categories, racial preferences, and other stuff, right? And then that information for a group of people that you're trying to target can be sold as information
Well,
for...
it is valuable information.
Valuable.
It's like market data. It's not just market data, it's awareness of your customer. Yeah.
And because it's in the social media, people share things that they normally wouldn't have shared with other people.
Right, so it's not contrived.
Yeah.
It is just the true thing. It's almost real, close to reality.
Well, the other thing is people interact with Facebook so much on a daily basis that it really creates a path of memory about that person's preferences, about that person's behavior.
Yeah. There were two things which I noticed. One question comes up on my mind is, well, I don't like to look for downsides in this show because this is a very appreciative show. But yet, I want to say, what are the risks involved? Are there, in the future, that people from your industry or people from your expertise think that this might be the danger? For example, the internet killed a lot of old kinds of businesses. No? I mean, it really killed it. There are no more encyclopedias, etc., stuff like that. But will it eventually, you think, might create any kind of a harm?
Well, again, what we've seen in the evolution of technologies is the old technologies always get supplanted by the newer technologies.
Right.
Like the old wind-up watch
Yeah.
was supplanted by the digital watch, right?
Yeah.
And the same for older technologies, like you said, books, the cassette tapes.
Yeah.
They've been supplanted by the new
Right.
technology. So
Yeah.
of course, the evolution of things will have to continue to move forward.
Yeah.
The other danger that people continue to talk about is the amount of privacy people have.
Yeah. Okay,
Right.
let's go there.
All of that information stored about them, typically, in most companies, they'd be very strict about what they will allow as information that can be shared. But in social media, your behavior, everything is tracked about you. Your chats with your friends, your preferences, all of that is recorded in that system, and then it's
Yeah.
sold, right? So there's a lot of discussion now about the privacy or the use of information and how that can be
That's
leveraged
one
by these
concern,
businesses.
and of course the carbon emissions and the size of the machinery, the servers that's required, that's huge. The one that was mentioned by Meg of HP. What's HP doing locally? I mean, what are you proud of today in the Philippines, Hewlett Packard in the Philippines?
One of the changes in the globe, right, or globally, about what we're doing today is that we've shrunk the world. So what we're doing today in the U.S. is pretty much what we're doing in the Philippines.
Which is?
Which is basically helping companies, helping individuals, helping communities leverage off the technology to make the world more useful to them. Or more livable.
Any specific project?
For example, some of the things that we're doing is, Meg talked a little bit about the explosion of information, the need for larger and more systems to be able to collect and process that information. And if we counted the future of what we would need to be able to do these things, she mentioned that we need to set up 10 power plants, right?
Yeah.
For in the Philippines, that takes 5-6 years to set up one power plant.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's not a path that you can go down the long term if you keep the technology usable for you. So we're inventing things in HP labs which really reduce the amount of power that is needed to drive these systems for us.
So make it more energy efficient.
More energy efficient, a lot more usable, a lot more scaled. When I started my IT career, right, the data center that we had for the company was a room probably the size of this room, and it probably had the same amount of processing power that you have on your phone nowadays.
I remember I was in air conditioning back in the 80s, and we had to air condition a computer room, and the computers were as big as this wall over here.
Yes.
And the room was the size of a basketball court, and it was just running one thermal plant. I think today you can do that with a laptop.
With a laptop, no cooling needed, or at least just a little fan, right?
So Noel, we are at about 3 minutes before we close the discussion. What does the future hold for you and the country of your love, Philippines? What's happening here, and how do you position yourself for growth, for self-actualization?
Well, first, let me address what the future holds for people, right?
Yeah,
for
okay.
our audience.
Yeah.
The future holds anything that we can imagine it to be, which is the most exciting part about it, right?
It's like the movies, like the
It's
song,
like the movies. Everything is possible, right?
Yeah.
Down the road. What's exciting for us in the IT space in the Philippines is that we are in the country where all of these things for the future of IT will help.
It's happening.
Is happening, right?
Yeah.
We're one of the primary, like the Philippines and India and China, are
It's
part
happening.
of where these changes are going to be developed, where the
Right.
future is going to be redefined
Oh,
and
yeah,
built.
yeah. And the reason for that is our innate talent, and the fact that we are service-oriented,
Yep.
and the fact that we were not an industrial country
Yes.
30 years ago.
And now we're
that kinda
moving from there to the IT knowledge worker side, the talent that we have to be
Good,
able
so
to
that's
drive
good
that
news
market.
for us Pinoys.
Well, absolutely good news. And that's why it was so important, the strides that we were able to make in the last 10 to 12 years about growing this industry of knowledge workers.
And you, what's future for you in HP or in Philippines?
Really expanding the capabilities, helping our customers, helping the people in our country and other countries make life more useful for them, leveraging off these technologies.
Great. Noel, thank you very much.
Thank you again for having me.
That gives me good insights on what application services or what the future holds for us, and the future is actually wide open. Wide open and very left to creativity, So salamat po. Stay with us and watch the next portion of this show where we'll talk about people involved with the same technology and the same evolution that's happening. Thank you,
Thank you very
Salamat,
much.
Mr. Mendoza from HP. Salamat.
You're very welcome.
So that was Noel Mendoza, Director of Services of Hewlett-Packard, and he talked about application services, management excellence. We didn't really speak about the management of it, but the presence of it. Yeah, we really spoke about that. So stay with us. We'll come back with Mr. Yu-Ming Chen of Viventis, and he's involved in the people side of this growing technology or the growth that is happening. And I'm your host, Raju Mandya, and this is Expat Insights.